let's talk briefly about the recent history of Afghanistan because it's important to where we're headed. Needless to say, unless you've been living off-grid, Afghanistan's history is replete with wars and violent conflicts, including, most recently, the more than 3 decades of foreign occupation, civil war, and the insurgency since around 1978. Now, I cannot take in one brief setting and in one brief teaching and bring you up to speed on the ancient history of Afghanistan and the Pashtuns and that part of the world. I feel it more important, for sake of time, that you at least understand a brief modern history of Afghanistan, because we can't control where Afghanistan has been, but the Bible tells us where Afghanistan is headed, as well as much of the world. Afghanistan and much of the Islamic world is intent to destroy what they call, translated from their native language, Little Satan. And Little Satan to the Islamic world is Israel. But they're equally focused upon eliminating what they call, again translated into our English language, the Great Satan. And the Great Satan to the Islamic world is the United States of America. So in your notes, one of the things that I want you to learn today for future understanding of end-time Bible prophecy is that the Islamic world exists to fulfill holy war or jihad against the little Satan, which is Israel, and the great Satan, which is the United States of America. Even their world leaders from various Islamic nations have openly declared, historically, recently, in major world conclaves and events, that they exist to wipe the United States and the Jewish state of Israel off of the face of the earth. And as you can see by graphic images on news stations, their hatred certainly is not hidden. Afghanistan has spent approximately 30 of the last 42 years of modern history fighting the most powerful nations on the earth, specifically the 2 most powerful nations on the earth. For the last 32 out of 40 years, Afghanistan has been fighting Russia and the United States of America. The Soviet Union and the Russian coalitions have fought for 10 years in Afghanistan, and the American military has fought in Afghanistan for the last 20 years. But the problem is still there, and they are more organized than ever before. One of the things that I've taught you in Bible prophecy is that God prophesied in the Old Testament. Don't put your faith in your military. In some Old Testament passages, it's translated as your war horses, and it speaks of your military strength and your military prowess. God said in the last days, what God has already outlined in the chronology of final Bible prophecy is going to be carried out, and not even the greatest military powers on the face of the earth will be able to slow it down, nor speed it up, nor stop it. As I mentioned to you in our text, Ezekiel, the prophet of the Old Testament, prophesied of a future time when God would put a hook in the jaws of great military powers and pull them out of that land. Why? For the purpose of allowing what he prophesied in the end times to be fulfilled without any hindrance or any restraint. And as you're going to learn in this broadcast, this is a part of what prophetically is going on with the United States and Afghanistan. It's almost as if, and we are not, let me make this clear, We are not the nation that Ezekiel prophesied about, where God in the end times would put a hook in their jaw and pull their military powers out of the way. We are not the fulfillment of Ezekiel 33. We as Americans are not the fulfillment of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and Ezekiel 39. I want to be very clear on that. The point that I'm making is that God, through Ezekiel, prophesied that in the last days, He would exhibit the divine power of putting a hook in the jaw of nations and militaries and moving them about as He wills, like chess pieces on a prophetic chessboard. And that's one of the points that I want to make. It's very unique in understanding this recent history of Afghanistan, that two of the greatest superpowers on the face of the earth, the Russians and the United States of America, have been embroiled in war in Afghanistan. Neither have prevailed. The Russians have been there for 10 years trying to establish their narrative for that part of the world. America has been there for 20 years trying to bring a stabilization and a peace and some type of predictability to that part of the Middle East, much of that done for the protection of Israel. But both nations, Russia and now America, have been embarrassed by a much smaller nation and a military power that wouldn't even rank anywhere near the top contenders of modern warfare. The Bible prophesied in Luke chapter 1, and I believe it's somewhere down around verse 25, that in the last days, this is a sign. Listen carefully. Luke 21 tells us that one of the signs that you're living in the final moments of human history, before the rapture of the church, before the tribulation, is that you would be an eyewitness of the distress of nations and great chaos and perplexity. I can't think of a better verse in the Bible to describe the horrendous American failure in Afghanistan more than distress of nations and the perplexity and the chaos of the end times. The Afghanistan problem that we're facing, I want to be careful because I don't want to be mean-spirited and I don't want to be harsh. But how could you describe it as anything less than an abject failure of our military? And listen, I'm not taking any shots at our military. I support our military. I support law enforcement. I am perfectly aware of the fact, as I hope you are, that they can only carry out the objectives and the orders that are given to them from their military leaders, and their military leaders are being dictated to by a current political narrative. And so I am not demeaning the American military. They are caught in a power of decision-making that was not their own, but you cannot call it what it is not. It is one of the greatest American abject military failures in the history of our nation. The United States has lost somewhere between 2,500, 3,000 soldiers in Afghanistan in this supposed peacekeeping stabilization effort. But if you didn't know that, listen to what I'm about to tell you. America has spent $273 million per day for 20 years to try to bring stabilization to Afghanistan and that region of the world. That is not a misquote. $273 million of taxpayers' money per day for 20 years which is why I use the word abject failure, because that is what it is, and you cannot put lipstick on this pig. It is one of the worst military failures in the history of our nation, especially when you compare the power of the American military and what we have for tools and weapons and planes and drones and tanks and on and on. The American military, because of decisions made at the White House and in secret rooms, has been driven out of this country by less than 75,000 goat herders. How can you call it anything else but an abject failure? And I'm going to try my best to be objective, and pardon me if I get a little heated, but I don't know how in the world you can't have a fire in your belly as you watch what's going on in our world today. Think of it. $273 million a day for 20 years. And we're driven out of that country like a dog with its tail between its legs by less than 75,000 untrained goat herders. Embarrassment is not enough to address what I'm talking about. Let me get off of that and move to the second key point that I want to share with you today. I've tried to provide for you just a little bit of recent history and background information to understand Afghanistan, in case no one has tried to bring some of that into a concise format that you could explain even to your children. But number two, let's talk a little bit about the geography of Afghanistan, because geography, listen, geography in final Bible prophecy is of utmost importance. Write that down. Geography in final Bible prophecy is of utmost importance because the Bible has much to say about it. And one of the ways that we understand Afghanistan in the context of both ancient history and Bible prophecy is to have at least a rudimentary understanding of the geography of the Middle East and of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is on the Asian continent, and it's a part of the Middle East region. I brought a couple of maps to kind of highlight what we're looking at today and provide that for you so that if you're listening to our YouTube channel, you can hit pause and study that map perhaps a little better. I want you to understand the geography of this. Again, geography is of utmost importance in final Bible prophecy. Russia is to her north. The Arabian Sea is to her south. Pakistan, India, China are to her east. And major players of Iran and Iraq are to her west. The Muslim world stretches from the far reaches of Western Africa all the way to Southeast Asia. There are 57 Islamic countries in this region of the world, and by and large, they cooperate and work together upon Islamic narratives in that region. The military powers in the Muslim world are ever changing, and this data is fluid, but I thought it might be educational and informative in the context of Bible prophecy. I'd like to show to you what are currently the top 5 military powers in this region of the world. Number 5 is Pakistan, and Pakistan has active personnel that number at around 637,000. Number 4 is Indonesia, and Indonesia has an active personnel of about 975,000. Number 3 is Iran, and Iran has 534,000 active personnel. The second military power in that region of the world would be Egypt, and they have 438,000 active personnel. And the greatest military power in the Islamic world as I speak is Turkey, with 356,000 active personnel. Now, it's important that you also understand that the numbers of active personnel that they list in their armies does not dictate the strength of their military prowess. There are many other factories as far as training and technology and multiple military variables that dictate their strength. But Turkey is number 1, Egypt is number 2, Iran is number 3, Indonesia is number 4, and Pakistan is number 5. Always remember what I have taught you repeatedly in our studies on Bible prophecy. Don't forget this. Of great, great importance. Don't forget this. The centerpiece of final Bible prophecy revolves around God's covenants to the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. That is so weighty in the understanding of final Bible prophecy. Let me say it again. Write it down. I don't oftentimes ask you to open your Bible and find a blank page in your notes in your Bible and write something in your Bible. I usually allow that to be personal and Spirit-led. But I'm going to ask you to make a note of this in your Bible somewhere. Let me give it to you again. The centerpiece of Bible prophecy revolves around Israel and God's covenants with the Jewish people and Jerusalem. So important, I'm going to give it to you a third time because many of you, I'm sure, are writing this down and some write faster than others.
Phi nè các bạn, người ta hỏi cái phi là bao nhiêu là pha ban đầu đó. Thì muốn biết được pha ban đầu này thì các bạn dựa ngay cái đường tròn lượng giác cho thầy. Đúng không ạ? Chúng ta vẽ cái đường tròn lượng giác ra. Đây là vị trí cân bằng O, đây là biên dương, đây là biên âm. Pha ban đầu là phải tìm ngay cái thời điểm ban đầu. Ở câu A chúng ta đã biết tại thời điểm ban đầu vật ở vị trí có ly độ x bằng trừ A. Đây. Và nó chuyển động theo chiều dương về vị trí cân bằng, tức là nó đi về đây. Được chưa? Như vậy ban đầu chắc chắn nó nằm ở đây, M0 đối với đường tròn lượng giác M0 nằm đây và nó sẽ quay như thế này. Đúng không? Để nó chuyển động về vị trí cân bằng. Vậy pha ban đầu là góc hợp bởi giữa M0, O và A, tức là nguyên góc này nè các bạn. Được chưa? Nguyên góc này đây. Và nhìn vào đây thì cái góc M0 OA này là góc bẹt, tức là 180 độ. Như vậy chúng ta trả lời phi này nó bằng pi. Đó, đơn vị là radian. Đó là xong cái nội dung câu B. Các bạn thấy nó rất là dễ đúng không các bạn? Không có gì mà khó khăn cả. Rồi, tiếp tục chúng ta qua câu số 4. Xác định biên độ, chu kỳ và tần số dao động có đồ thị thời gian được như biểu thị như hình vẽ. Như vậy người ta yêu cầu mình tính biên độ là tìm chữ A. Đúng không ạ? Biên độ là A, tính chu kỳ là chữ T, tần số là tính chữ F. Thì bài này quá dễ rồi, các bạn nhìn vào đây nè. Cái độ lệch lớn nhất đó là biên độ, độ lệch lớn nhất đó là biên độ. Và đây chúng ta thấy A này nó bằng 10 cm. Lưu ý biên độ luôn luôn là số dương nha, không được lấy là âm đâu nha. Rồi, chu kỳ. Thì các bạn coi nè. Chu kỳ là thời gian để vật thực hiện được một dao động. Các bạn thấy ngay tại thời điểm T bằng 0 nè. Đúng không? Các bạn coi tại thời điểm T bằng 0 vật từ vị trí cân bằng đi lên biên dương. Rồi từ vị trí biên dương đi về vị trí cân bằng.